Hello everyone, so today I'm going to show you how to knit a single motif on a Brother KH-270 chunky electronic machine. Now here's the Stitch World pattern book that came with the chunky 270. If we turn to page 26 we can see the two cats, pattern number 75, and that's the motif that I'm going to knit today. And if we turn to page 94, you can see it there, you can see it there in graph form, and it's 47 stitches wide. So, I've cast on 60 stitches, 30 on each side of 0. I'm going to be using chunky, it's just a acrylic chunky yarn. I've got the purple as my main colour, and I've got this sort of, I don't know what you'd call that, I guess it's a sort of like a mustard colour. And what you'll want to prepare is a length of main yarn. Make sure it's a decent length so you don't run out when you're knitting the motif. And you want to double it in half, basically, so you get a long strand and fold it in half. And we'll use that for preventing holes where the yarn turns around and comes back. Because if you knit Fair Isle in the middle of the row and the colour goes back the other direction, you'll end up with a ladder where the colour has stopped. So we're going to use a length of yarn and wrap it around the needles next to where the colours finish, and that will prevent a hole from forming. But the very first thing we want to do before we even program the machine, I'm just going to unthread it, take the carriage off the bed, I'm going to set it to KC and turn it over. And the end needle selection cams here, the pink ones, you just want to get a single prong transfer tool and give them a quarter twist. They only go one way, either one way or the other, and turn them off, and you can see they retract back in. And that will prevent the carriage from selecting end needles, because we don't want end needle selection for single motifs. So turn KC off and put the carriage back on the bed, and we can go ahead and rethread it. Okay. So now I'm going to switch the machine on. The ready light's on. I'm going to press selector 2, and I'm going to press step, and the pattern number light comes on. I'm going to press clear, the CE button, and enter 75. If you press the wrong number into the machine, you can cancel it out and put the correct number in. Then we press step, and the quantity light comes on, and the machine's now asking us how many repeats of this pattern do we want. Well, I only want one motif, so I want one repeat, which is the full excuse me, is the full chart. So I'm just going to enter 1. You'll see in the memo display here that also says 1, and that means we're on the first motif. The machine will allow up to 6 motifs of the same pattern. It can't be from different pattern numbers, this machine doesn't allow that, but it does give you the option of putting 6 motifs anywhere you like on the garment. So press step, and it gives us the needle position. It's automatically set here by default to yellow 23 for this particular pattern, so the first needle position will be here at yellow 23, and it will start knitting the pattern from there and repeat onwards. Well, if we didn't want it to repeat from there, we could press CE to cancel that out, and the yellow and green lights will flash, so the machine's asking us where do we want to put the motif. So I can either select green or yellow depending on how wide my knitting is and where I want to position it, and I could put yellow 14 if I wished, but I'm just going to leave it as it is at yellow 23. So we press step, the quantity light comes back on, and you'll notice in the memo display it shows 2. So now it's asking how many repeats do we want for the second motif. Well, I don't want a second motif, so I'm just going to put 0 then press step, and the ready light will come on, and we're ready to knit the motif. Take the carriage outside the turn mark and set it to KC, and that engages the timing belt. And we'll just go across to select the needles. And you'll notice the carriage has selected certain needles for this pattern. So we're going to go ahead and get the second colour and put it into feeder 2. Sorry, that required 2 hands. So we've put the second colour in feeder 2, and I've just put a little loop in it and put it on the clamp. And I'm going to release this purple yarn from around the clamp as well, before that causes us any problems. And I might have to take the yellow off first. There we go. Okay. So now we're going to press in multicolour, and then we're just going to begin knitting the pattern. So we're going to knit motifs 1 row at a time, because we need to wrap at each end. So we'll knit the first row to get the colour in. Ooh, a bit stiff. I'm using my left hand, which I wouldn't normally use to knit. And the chunky machines can be a bit more difficult to move. So my length of main colour yarn here, which I've folded in half, and we're just going to hang the loop on the very first needle next to the last selected needle on the carriage side. You only wrap on the carriage side with the spare yarn. So I'm going to put that on there like that and push that back to B position. I'm going to knit a row. And you'll see here, on this side, on the carriage side, we need to wrap on that side as well. So I'm going to bring the yarn across. To be honest, I would, normally on the standard gauge machine, it's not really a huge problem, because the gauge difference, you probably would want 2 strands of yarn actually for each side, because that's going to leave too long of a float really. So what I'm going to do is, I'm just going to catch it here on this needle, and then on this one, of course on the main colour stitches, otherwise it would show. And that just tidies it up a bit. It's still a bit long, but it doesn't matter, it's just for a sample. So the very last needle that's in B position next to the very last selected needle, we bring that needle forward. Not so much so the stitch goes behind the latch, just bring it forward slightly so you can wrap the yarn in that hook. You see we did a little E-wrap there. Push the needle back to B. You probably want some clips or pegs, clothespins, whatever you want to call them, on the end of these yarns to keep them weighted a bit. But I normally, when I'm knitting with 2 hands and not holding a camera, I'll just sort of hold it down slightly when I pass the carriage. But anyway, I'll knit the next row. This is row 3. You can see here, there's the first needle next to the last selected needle in B position. We bring that forward, wrap the yarn, push it back to B, knit across. Before we go any further, I'm just going to take the yarn off this clamp here, just so it doesn't cause us any problems. We're on this side again with the carriage, so I'm going to bring that last needle in B position next to the first selected needle, wrap it, push it back, knit across. And we just repeat this process until we finish knitting the motif. Okay, so I think you get the idea. So I'm going to knit the rest of this motif and I'll take it off the machine and I'll show you what it looks like. And there we have our motif. You can see the two lovely cats there, the little love heart in the middle. If we compare it to the photo of the pattern on page 26, pattern number 75, there it is. We're just missing the little dicky bows. Of course, I would never choose those colours together, but it's just for a sample, just so you can see what I'm doing, basically. There we are. That's the single motif. Now, if we look at the back side, of course, that's the knit side. Just pop it off the gate pegs here. You can see they have a nice neat edge where we wrapped the yarn all the way up. And of course, if this were, you can see it on that side a little bit better. Nice neat edge, almost like intarsia when you cross the yarns where the colours join. You can see, because this is the bulky machine, it's quite long floats. So if this were in a garment, what I would probably do with these is I'd probably cut these and then weave them in. And then some of the other ones I'd likely latch up and catch them down. But yeah, so there we go. A Fair Isle motif on the Brother KH-270 Electroknit chunky machine. So hopefully you found this helpful, and thanks for watching.